Oceans were once not what they are today. Cities on the coast of major oceans like the Atlantic and Pacific were not the bustling port-filled hubs that we see in the present day. It took until the first millennium for ships to be able to navigate the waters of the Indian Ocean at a profitable time and accuracy. Rivers could only go so far, gulfs and bays were too small, and overland routes were dangerous and slow. However, in between the three continents of the Old World, there happened to be an ocean that was just the right size for naval technology at the time. It was filled with islands and peninsulas that ships could use to navigate and reload with, and a sailor was never more than 200 miles away from land. This mini ocean was the Mediterranean Sea. This sea had been important to the previous civilizations of Mesopotamia that we covered in the previous video, but those civilizations and the ones that came after them only ever managed to conquer the eastern half. Now, in 300 BC, there were two new kids on the block, and they both were at the center of the Mediterranean. The first was Carthage, an empire founded by sailors from modern-day Lebanon who founded their capital in modern-day Tunisia. These people were traders first, empire second, and thus most of their empire hugged the coast of the southwestern portion of the Mediterranean. Their rival to the north was Rome. Although Rome was a republic, it was heavily expansionist. They had recently conquered the Italian peninsula, but had seen the profit Carthage was making off its coastal colonies, and had grown lustful of what Carthage had. Plus, Roman consuls who were often generals of the army had a habit of keeping their troops loyal to them by promising them land. And one piece of land the Romans wanted was Sicily. I mean, who wouldn't? It's got fertile soil from the volcanoes, and it's going to be the future set of the best movie ever. So Rome went to war with Carthage in the First Punic War. The actual catalyst for this war is quite frankly ridiculous. Basically, pirates from Naples invaded a Sicilian city. Carthage tried to kick them out, and then Rome decided to help the pirates out. Anyway, Rome won this war, and thus the island of Sicily. The Romans had now stepped up from just being a kingdom in the Italian peninsula to a real force in the Mediterranean that could threaten Carthage. Now, the Second Punic War is one of the most interesting wars in history, filled with blood oaths, elephants, and battles that were actually won through strategy, rather than pure numbers. Now, there's a ton of great videos on the Punic Wars, but what is important to this series is how the war changed the face of the Mediterranean world. Rome had crushed Carthage, so much so that their capital was destroyed to the point where we can no longer find it to this day. This set up Rome to go on to conquer the rest of its rivals in the Mediterranean, the Macedonians, Spartans, Seleucids, Ptolemaic Egypt, and the various other kingdoms and tribes. Finally, by 31 BC, during the reign of Augustus, when the empire was officially declared, Rome had total control of the Mediterranean Sea. From then on, the balance of power had shifted to beyond the Mediterranean, and the Persian Parthian Empire became Rome's main rival. Rome and Parthia had effectively a natural barrier, with the coastal areas of the Levant being very easy for the Roman military to send legions to in order to defend, and the Zagros Mountains provided an effective defense for Parthia's heartland. But there was one region that was the corridor between these two empires, and that region was controlled by Armenia. Armenia was initially made a client state of Rome in the early days of the empire, paying it tribute in exchange for independence. Armenia would also occasionally ally with, or at least not fight, the invading Parthians if they promised them independence. However, eventually towards the end of the empire, when Rome was at its greatest extent, Emperor Trajan fully incorporated this territory into the empire, along with the region of Babylon captured from the Parthians. Alas, after Trajan's death, the empire began to decline, was partitioned, and eventually the old capital itself fell, and the balance of power in the Mediterranean world would never be the same again. Thank you for watching the second episode on the balances of power throughout history. In the next episode, we will take a look at a people who had no permanent settlements, but somehow managed to completely tip the scales of power in their favor.